Hi, and welcome to the first homework help video for the semester, which is going to be on Chapter 2. So let's just kind of jump in, because we're going to be taking a look at one of the homework questions from Section 2.2, and we're going to be doing question number 10. And we're going to see how we can use technology, particularly Microsoft Excel, to hopefully make this question a little bit easier on ourselves. So, first up, let's read the question. The researcher wants to determine the number of televisions in households, so he conducts a survey of 40 randomly selected households and obtains the data in the accompanying table. And you'll see it says, click here to view the table of the television counts. And so, again, you're going to have to click that on problems like this, and it's going to open up with the data set. And this is the data set that we want to organize, and describe. Now, you'll notice that, obviously, this data set is, well, kind of ugly. And you could, of course, do all of this by hand, but we're going to use technology to try to make life a bit easier on ourselves. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, first where it says, click to copy table, and you can do this with any data set on MyStatLab. It doesn't necessarily have to be one that pops out, but any data set, you can click this, and it'll almost always give you these three options. Open StatCrunch, which is a good option if you know how to use StatCrunch. Copy to a clipboard, and again, that's just going to be basically the raw data. But what we really want to use is open this in Excel. Because again, you have access to Excel. It comes as part of your being a student in the Connecticut state system. And so we want to open it in Excel. So I click that, and now I see it downloaded. Click to open, and open in Microsoft Excel. Perfect. So this is what Excel looks like. This is the version that I downloaded as an employee of the state. That should be the same copy you have. And now the first thing you're going to have to do with every single time you open up a data set in Excel is up here where it says Enable Editing. You need to enable editing so that you can actually, well, manipulate this data set. So let's take a look at the question and see what it wants us to do first. So the first question is, are these data discrete or continuous? So remember, discrete means it has to go in very specific jumps. And continuous means it could be anything and anything in between. So we're talking about the number of televisions. This is absolutely going to be a discrete set of data, because you either have 0 televisions or 1 television or 2 televisions or so on. It wouldn't make sense to have parts of a television, to have decimal number televisions. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense. So this is definitely discrete, which means it's either A or D, and discrete because it can take on any real value, or is it discrete because it can only have whole number values? Well, that's what discrete means. Discrete means it has to have those whole number values. So that's the answer to part A. Now part B. Construct a frequency distribution of the data. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the Microsoft Excel that I opened. And so I need to know the frequencies for each of, well, these different discrete values. Again, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Now, I could go through the data and just count, but the much better way to do this is to actually sort the data first. And so I want to sort the data. It's in column A, so, well, click column A, and you'll see it highlights the entire thing. And then the sorting tool, again, if yours is like mine, it's up here. It says sort and filter, and basically it says right there, organize your data so you can analyze it. And you can do smallest to largest, largest to smallest, or some sort of custom. But typically we want to do smallest to largest. Put our data in that ordinal level of measurement. So, smallest to largest. Alright. And now let's create our own little table in Microsoft Excel to help us with this problem. So, let's label our columns. So number 1 will be the number of TVs, and then my next column will be the frequency. Alright, so the number of TVs. Well, it looks like you can have 0, 1 TV, 2 TVs, 3 TVs, 4 TVs. I think I saw, well, it's ordered, so I can go down to the bottom. Yeah, all the way down to 5 TVs. And we can see that clearly it goes to the number 40. Those are all 40 data values. So the last one is 5. Now, by sorting the data first, this is going to make the second part much easier. So the frequency. How many times does the number 0 show up? Well, clearly it shows up twice. So the frequency would be 2. Now for the number 1, how many times does that show up? And now I just count. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So number 1 shows up 12 times. Now how many times does the number 2 show up? Well, let's scroll down a little bit and start counting. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 15 times. Okay, 15 times. Now how many times does the number 3 show up? It looks like that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. So 3 would be 9. And then 4 and 5. Looks like 4 and 5 both just show up once. So 1 and 1. Now, it's always a good idea to make sure that we actually did count every single data value. So I'm going to make one last entry here for the total. And I want to sum up that column. Now again, there's formula tools in Excel that make this really easy. And in fact, this one here, it's the Greek letter sigma, means to sum. And we're going to be using that Greek letter sigma quite a bit, especially when we do our numerical summaries. But again, that Greek letter symbol, that Greek letter sigma is our symbol for sum. So I click that, and you can see down here it even says sum. Add them all up. And it highlighted all of my values because Microsoft Excel is pretty intuitive that way. Hit enter, and good, 40. That means I absolutely took care of each entry here, and yeah, it was 40. So now, the next step is to just transfer the work I did over here in Excel into MyStatLab. So let's see. So 0 showed up 2 times, 1 showed up 12 times, 2 showed up 15 times, then 9, then 1, then 1. Enter. Fantastic. Alright, now the next one is the relative frequency. So now we have to find the part to the whole. And again, Microsoft Excel is going to help us quite a bit. So now I want a column for relative frequency. And again, good idea to label everything first. And so relative frequency, again, we're going to divide each of those numbers by the total, which is 40. So 2 divided by 40, then 12 divided by 40, and so on. And again, we could do this a couple different ways, but again, Microsoft Excel makes this really easy. If I want to do the mathematics right in Excel, what I want to do is first hit the equals button. Equals lets Excel know that we're going to actually be doing an equation or a formula to calculate our answer. And here's the nice part too. So I want to figure out what the relative frequency is for the 0 televisions. We know the frequency is 2. I'm actually going to click that cell. So it's going to automatically input the number 2, and then I want to divide it by 40, which is the total. So divide it by 40, and that gives me my relative frequency. My relative frequency is going to be 0.05. Now, this isn't a huge data set, so we can do that individually with each one, but again, Microsoft Excel makes this really easy for us, and much more convenient, especially if you have even larger sets of data, is if I want to continue that pattern, where I divide the number in this column by 40, we click the cell, or the Excel entry we just did, which has the 0.005, and in that bottom corner, you'll see the plus sign changes from, well, empty to this one, and we just scroll all the way down and kind of just drag it down, and it just filled in all of my relative frequencies for me. And we can even see that that bottom, the total, the sum, right? We better end up with 1, right? That's the whole concept of my relative frequencies. When I sum them, they have to add up to 1 every single time. And again, Microsoft Excel did all of the work for us. It did all of the mathematics for us. It's now just up to us to interpret this data. And so, well, in this case, it just means typing these values back into my MyStatLab homework. So let's see. So 0.05. Next one was 0.3. And next one was 0.375. The next one was 0.225. 0.225. And lastly, the last two were 0.025. 0.025. Enter. And fantastic. Perfect. All right, the next question. What percentage of the households in the survey had 3 televisions? So remember, percentage is just taking that relative frequency and moving the decimal place over 2 spots. So 3 televisions had a relative frequency of 0.225. So if I move that decimal place over 2 spots, that becomes 22.5, or 22.5%. Perfect. The next question. What percentage of the households had 4 or more? All right, so 4 or more. That means that they either had 4 or 5 televisions, which means I just need to sum up those 2 relative frequencies. So 0.025 plus 0.025. You use a calculator if you need to, but it's going to end up being 0.05. This again wants a percentage, so move that decimal place over 2 spots, 5%. So 5% of the households had 4 or more televisions. Now we want a frequency histogram. All right, so it's multiple choice, and again, you could probably, figure this out on your own. But again, Microsoft Excel can build these for you, and we can make life a lot easier. So the first thing we want to do is highlight the data that we actually want to make a histogram or a bar graph about. And so again, we want to highlight that data that we want. So in this case, highlight the number of TVs 0 through 5 and their frequencies. And then to create a graph, we want to insert it. So go up to that top menu, insert, and again, you're going to see all the different types of graphs here, and you can choose what graph you want to use independently, but Microsoft Excel is actually fairly intuitive about choosing the best type of representation for the data. So usually you can just hit recommended chart, and oh, look at that. It shows a bar graph for us as the very, very first choice. Click OK, and there's my bar graph. And now it's just a matter of figuring out, well, which one of the options on MyStatLab is going to match that bar graph. And it looks like that's definitely going to be B. My frequency histogram is, in this case, is B. Now a relative frequency histogram. So I could go back to Microsoft Excel and make a whole new histogram or bar graph, but I don't actually have to, because I know that my frequency bar graph or my frequency histogram is going to look exactly the same as my relative frequency. The shape doesn't change at all. So here's my shape for frequency, and the one with the exact same shape would be, in this case, option B again. All right. And now the last part says to describe the shape of the distribution. So again, if I'm taking a look, I see, well, my peak happens at 2, and there's 2 values to the left of the peak, but there's 3 values to the right of the peak. So since it seems like the tail goes off a little bit further to the right, my distribution is most likely skewed right. Again, I know it's right because my peak here is at 2. There's 2 options to the left, but 3 options to the right. If there's more options to the right, that means the tail is to the right, and my distribution is skewed right. Alright, so that completes that homework question. If you have any questions of yourself, please take the time to send me an email, and I'll try to help you. But otherwise, good luck completing.